My name is Christine Herman, and I am here with the lovely and brilliant Karena Thek. I want to thank you for joining me.
Oh, Christine, thank you.
About me, and then we're going to go right into scoliosis Pilates and all of those beautiful things that Karena is doing. My name is Christine Herman. I am the owner of Body Acumen, and I help busy women their self-care and discover their body's amazing healing capabilities so they can stay active, strong, and do the things that they love to do. And in my own mission, I've kind of branched out to some different areas, and I met Karena because my daughter was diagnosed with scoliosis, and at the time we were told that bracing and surgery were the only options. And so I was exploring different areas and different therapies that might be helpful to her when I found Karena, who has had such a profound impact on our lives with her Scolio-Pilates program. And we were 2 degrees away from needing bracing, and we worked with Karena's program, and we've reduced her curve by 9 degrees, and we've stayed out of a brace, which has been just amazing for both of us. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. It's really, I'm super happy that, when I wrote the book, that I'm now super surprised that it was someone besides my mom that read the book. But, but honestly, Christine, you did the work. I mean, you literally grabbed that book, grabbed the information and applied it. I didn't intervene anywhere until much later, until after you got these amazing results. So honestly, it's kudos to you and your daughter for doing the work. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And I just wanted to step back for a second and tell people a little bit more about some of the things that you've been doing. So you've had your company since 1999, which you have been leading.
Yes.
And you've written 3 books: Scolio-Pilates, Osteo-Pilates, and Pilates Golf Athlete.
So there's 4 books because there's an additional, the handbook. I don't know, maybe you can't really call that a book, but I have got 4 things on my shelf.
Yay.
Not books, maybe just stuff, but yeah.
And then you're working on a neuro Pilates book?
Yes, I don't want anybody holding their breath for that, but it is definitely looking more and more like that will come to fruition. But the Scolio-Pilates work has, like when I wrote Osteo-Pilates, it was like, okay, that door opened, and I wouldn't say that door ever closed, but I felt like that kind of pool filled up, and it was like time to investigate something new. Whereas with scoliosis, it's like that pool will just never, for me, get filled up. And so we're constantly trying to swim in that pool and trying to move forward. So while I know there's a need for the neuro Pilates, and I know that very personally with the clients I work with and every other things happening, it just hasn't quite gotten on paper yet. I'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot on your plate for sure. And I know that the Scolio-Pilates in particular is so needed.
Thank you. I don't think I have any more on my plate than anybody else. The world is a busy place, and we tend to all hate vacuums, or at least nature does. And so if you've got a free minute in the day, nature's going to come in and fill it up for you. And so, but I appreciate that. It's really kind of you to say that I'm busy and that you understand that. But I know you are just as busy.
So in 2017, you were asked to bring your Scolio-Pilates program to Dayton Children's Hospital. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there and how it's being used.
Well, that was one of the big Scolio-Pilates landmarks, because our goal when we initiated the program was to make scoliosis exercise part of the paradigm for managing scoliosis. Currently, the most accepted forms for scoliosis management would be observation. Let's just see if this gets worse. Maybe we don't have to do anything, and why fret? And the next would be, okay, you did get worse, so let's brace you. And then the last would be surgery. And of course, that only happens in a very small percentage of patients. But our goal all along was to provide exercise as an option. And so when Dayton Children's Hospital said, we want to bring Scolio-Pilates, scoliosis specific exercise into our hospital as part of the treatment paradigm, we were like, what? This is exactly 6 years after I was doing an interview on XM radio where my mic was cut for suggesting that exercise could help with scoliosis. So I thought, well, I'll just spend my whole life, and maybe 3 generations from now, people will say, yes, exercise for scoliosis, what a great idea. But 6 years after that interview, to have a hospital like Dayton Children's take the work on was, I mean, they've been voted as one of the top US children's hospitals by US News and World Report. So that's a really, really big deal. And so today, their paradigm remains observation, bracing, surgery, and Scolio-Pilates. And we are really thrilled about that. And when I first started there, I really, we talked to the doctors and we said, you know, we want to work with adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. We're not confident that you should be giving us your neurological patients, your developmentally delayed patients. We're not confident that this work will work for them. Well, the doctor said, okay, and sent them anyway. And I can't tell you how glad we are. Well, I can speak for myself. I can't tell you how glad I am that they did, because I was 100% wrong. That all of the patients, whether they were developmentally delayed, whether there was a neuro disorder, whether there was a muscular development disorder, we saw changes, and they were such positive changes. And it wasn't just a physical change. You know, when you've got a kid who's like, oh, yes, I have scoliosis, and no, I don't want to talk about it. And they're just feeling like there's just been so much importance placed on it. They go to the doctor, they do this and they do that, and there's just like scoliosis, you have scoliosis. And then these kids are like, I have scoliosis, and so does Usain Bolt, and he won the 400-meter, gold medal in the Olympics. And I have scoliosis, and so does almost every professional dancer. And I have scoliosis, and so does supermodel Martha Hunt, who works for Victoria's Secret. So it kind of opens them up, and they're like, well, only the important people have scoliosis. And so it's been such a gift. So I know I expounded on that a lot, but yeah, very passionate about that.
I love that. Actually, last week I was talking to Deb. She's on November 5th. She's going to be talking about mindset and the connection between your mental and emotional health and your physical health. And you just kind of brought that piece in, because
you can't separate it. Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. I love that. What was I going to ask you? So in your bio, you talk about how you're bringing 3-dimensional exercise into the program at Dayton Children's Hospital. So can you tell us what you mean by 3-dimensional exercise, and what exercise for a scoliosis spine, like how is that different from traditional exercise?
So honestly, it's not. However, when exercise has been used for management of scoliosis, when you see an x-ray of scoliosis, you see an x-ray that looks just like the spine in my background. So really, you're just kind of looking at this S shape, or maybe you're looking at a C shape, but you're looking at it 2-dimensionally. And because my spine bends to the left, for millennia, the solution has been, well, just bend to the right, and because this side is hollowed out, it looks like there's not enough muscle there. So let's just strengthen that side. And so when we're talking about scoliosis, it's often been viewed as something very two-dimensional. Like all you have to do is side bend the other way. All you have to do is strengthen that muscle on that side and you're going to be fine. Honestly, if that were true, scoliosis wouldn't exist because I can figure out how to bend the other way. That's not a problem. And so can all of my clients, but it doesn't unfortunately work. So scoliosis is not just two-dimensional. It is just like if you are a Pilates instructor or a movement specialist, you know that you're not just working in one plane of motion, right? You know there's rotation and you know there's forward bend and back bends. And so scoliosis has to be managed that way. We have to understand the rotations that occur in scoliosis, and that's what causes the hollow and the we call them sand dunes, the parts that lift off the back. And so we have to not just consider the side bend, but we have to consider the rotations and we have to consider the forward and back aspect. Now, once you consider that, then you're talking about scoliosis in 3 dimensions. And it sounds very logical. You know, you would never have somebody without scoliosis stand in front of you like this and like that and say, okay, let's start moving. You know, you're gonna get those shoulders level and then you're gonna get their feet level front and back. And so it's the same exact thing. It just is a bit more, okay, it's a lot more complex sometimes with scoliosis to get those 3 dimensions back to center. Where with someone without scoliosis, it can be like, yeah, okay, got it, let's go, bicep curls.
Right, right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So for people who might be interested in what you're doing but don't have scoliosis, like can some of the things from your program be applied to postures that are out of alignment? So for example, like most of the people in my community are plagued by the forward head posture. Actually, most people in America.
Just your community. It must be just your community. I've never seen that. Yeah.
So it's a big concern. You know, I hear it every day about the forward head and the slumping shoulders. And I don't want to look like my parents when I get older. What can I do? Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, you can start doing Pilates. My father decided he didn't want to look like his father when he got older, and we all adore my grandfather, but he did have quite a hard time with the kyphosis and the forward head, and he was not on the cell phone. You know, it's part of aging. It's part of working at a desk an entire life. And so my parents started Pilates for the first time when they were in their young 70s. And now they're doing it usually once, well, I should say 1 week they're doing once a week, 1 week they're doing twice a week. So they kind of bounce back and forth. And my father actually accomplished it. He does not have that posture that his grandfather has, or that my grandfather had. He certainly has a tendency towards it, but he's not full on kyphotic like my grandfather was. Now, the other part of your question was like, do I want to take time to take a scoliosis, to have a scoliosis education as part of my portfolio when I really just want to focus on low back pain, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that's really interesting about learning about scoliosis is that it applies to everything because nobody is symmetrical. And so if you learn scoliosis, it's like getting an advanced diploma in everything that can go, awry with the spine. And I don't want to say wrong, it's just asymmetrical. And so then, you've got someone in front of you with scoliosis that has rotations and translations in their pelvis and maybe a very different translation, asymmetry in the lumbar, the same for the thoracic, the same for the shoulder girdle, the same for the cervical. And the way that feeds down the arms is really interesting, and the way that feeds down the legs is really interesting. And so if you can understand that, and somebody walks into your studio with a pelvic asymmetry, and that's it, you're like, got it, that was easy. So you get this knowledge that's up here. And then, yes, it all applies to every human body because none of us are asymmetrical. And it makes working with that pelvic asymmetry that walks in like, oh, that was just easy. And so, yeah.
So that's what you mean when you say that what happens in scoliosis spines happens in all spines?
Yes, thank you for recapping. Yes, that was brilliant.
Okay, that
just to a lesser degree. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And our repetitive motions throughout the day as we age can bring our spines out of alignment.
Yeah.
Which is why doing these kinds of exercises or connective tissue care can be so beneficial.
I think that's a really good phrase, Christine, connective tissue care, because Gil Hadley will tell you, he's one of the foremost anatomists of our time. He will tell you that the muscles really just do what the connective tissue tells it to do. He phrased it much more colorfully, in a much more colorful manner, but yes, I mean, it really does. And if you have connective tissue care, then you have health moving through your body. We just weren't meant to be as static as we are. And as much as we hate our little watches dinging us to stand up and you want to throw it across the room, it really is like, oh, okay, wow, I sit a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have a bunch of connective tissue care fans in my community. So I know they'll appreciate that explanation. I love Gil Hadley too. I did his dissection and he's amazing.
Yeah.
Movement can be such a healer. And so the question I wanted to ask you is, how is movement different when you're looking to bring your spine to a more neutral position? I know you have some tools that you use to kind of glide underneath the body to actually enable that connective tissue care, right? Or the connective tissue to relax in the right position so you can strengthen around it. Could you talk a little bit more?
Yeah. So the connective tissue is this really beautiful liquid crystal structure that is, they call it fractal, meaning has infinite possibilities of how it exists in your body. It's kind of like, you go to the beach and imagine it's a pebbly beach. And every time the wave comes in, those pebbles move into a different position based on the pressures of the water. And so the connective tissue is very much the same. It's moving with me and it's changing. It's not breaking and tearing and being like strewn in different places. No, it is literally just gliding and sliding and moving and reaching. And so therefore, movement as a healing mechanism, like you said, is definitely, every time you move, you open up a possibility for that connective tissue. Now, when you're living in a body that's asymmetrical, which, who isn't, then the more movement possibilities that you give your body, then the more healing, I should say, the more possibilities you give your connective tissue, the more possibilities you have that connective tissue continues to move. And as that connective tissue moves, there's extra liquid crystals that move up and down that connective tissue. You could call it a hydration of sorts, for sure. So we definitely, I think I got lost here, Christine. Am I answering your question or did I get off track?
So, no, I love this explanation about the gliding, sliding. It's funny because I'm going like this as you're doing it.
Yeah. We all hate sitting still. We're movers. We'll talk and move.
So the question is, how is movement different when you're looking to bring a spine into neutral?
That's what I forgot. Okay. So the movement isn't really that different, but so in our philosophy, you're going to start with elongation, because elongation is going to be the easy button. Even if you decide to not do anything else, not only does it bring things closer to a more symmetrical position, but there's an internal eccentric, for the most part, stabilization that's happening in the spine and in the tissues. And you can feel it even if you're sitting right now. If you place the crown of your head over the seat of your pelvis, and then you reach up, it doesn't feel like relaxation. It feels like work. And that's why it's so hard to hold this, is that that's work and things have to contract. But it's like, it's a very stabilizing contraction without having to go tummy in, which doesn't really work for these purposes. Okay, so that would be number one. Now, once you're there, let's say you don't do anything else to change those asymmetries. You've just done this. You've allowed your body to find its symmetry wherever it's comfortable here. Now, no matter what you do, including breathing and talking like we are, that shape is being confirmed, because my diaphragm has no choice now but to breathe in this shape. As before, when I was talking, I was probably down here in my curve because I was very focused on you and very intense on what I was trying to say. But now here, I'm going to be, I have no choice. My diaphragm must breathe in this position. And the diaphragm is such an internal stabilizer. When I first started teaching Pilates, I was like, do we really have to focus on the inhale, the exhale, the inhale, the exhale? I mean, clearly they're breathing, they're alive. And so it only took me decades to figure out that that diaphragm was that internal support structure. And without it, then we're trying to tape around the outside of the body with the muscles, as opposed to starting from the inside with the most important structure of all, which is the diaphragm. So now the diaphragm is more symmetrical and supporting and stabilizing more symmetrically. But now, even if I don't correct the other asymmetries and I do take my bicep curl, then the muscles are going to work more symmetrically. And because I have scoliosis and I'm doing this just with elongation, no other corrections, I feel my muscles really having to work here, because this is not a position that's familiar, not the most familiar to my body. This is the familiar position. And I could probably do this for the next 5 minutes and not fatigue in my back. But here is unfamiliar. And even though I've been doing this work for over 10 years now, it's still not my most familiar position. My goal for you, Christine, for anybody with scoliosis or any asymmetries, is to never lose the ability to return to this more symmetrical position, even if it doesn't feel familiar, or I should say, even if it's not the most familiar. Say, this is the most familiar, or this is the most familiar. It's okay, we're human, we have lives, but don't lose this one. Don't lose the ability to at least return to it. And I will promise you that the more you do this and you become familiar and stronger here and more stable here, that going back to your asymmetries, you won't be able to go back as far as you were before, because it will also be unfamiliar and uncomfortable. You might find a place somewhere in between those two, but at least it's not all the way back where you were. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. And it is like the perfect nugget. So on November 5th, we're going to be talking about simple shifts that people can make.
Awesome.
And elongation, I feel like, with my experience, especially with Bronwyn, my daughter, that elongation, even if you forget everything else, you can do that. And you can be sitting on the bus and you can elongate. And your mom can send you a really cheesy text with a balloon on it. And you can
I love that
during the day.
That's brilliant.
So that's one of those simple shifts. And it's not, like you said, it's not just scoliosis. I mean, I think we've all lost the ability to really sit up straight in the way that brings our spine into the most neutral position, because it's hard to, I think it's hard to do, which means that I'm usually like this, which is true. You get so involved in what you're doing and you kind of fall into these postures that are, because your muscles get fatigued.
Yes. And I don't think it's something new to the 21st century. I think there have been jobs throughout the millennia that humans have had that have bent them over the years. If it was working in fields, I would say that if I had to have, a job working in the field, I want to be the person that carries vegetables on top of my head, because that's probably going to be the one that's asking me to elongate. But if you think about all the jobs through the centuries, there's not too many that would have had us in this upright position. And so it's always been about having to come back to center. Now, certainly the cell phones aren't helping us. And in addition to the posture, the breathing, I mean, if you notice, maybe you have already, most people hold their breath when they're texting. And so it's just like, a double whammy for us.
Yeah.
So just being aware of it, and what you're doing, Christine, is bringing awareness to it makes a big difference.
For sure. I am so excited to have you join us on November 5th. November 5th is called Healing the Whole Body, Mindset, Nutrition, and Movement. And Karena is going to be sharing more about movement, more about her Scolio-Pilates program. It's going to be beautiful. So I know we're up against our time. So can you tell people in the meantime how they can find you?
The website is scoliopilates.com. And there is, if you sign up for the email there, you get this really awesome exercise video. And the reason I say it's really awesome is I filmed it in Arizona, or was I California? I don't remember where it was. But while I was filming it up against the rocks, a herd of mountain goats, no, bighorn sheep, showed up in the background. And so there I am, like just talking to you on the camera going, and when I watched the video later, I knew they were back there, but I didn't know there were so many. And it was just amazing. So not only do you get some awesome exercises to just give yourself a break from your desk, but those bighorn sheep are amazing, honestly.
And Karena, you have just a love of animals. So if anyone were to join your classes, they might find that they get to meet Gus, the basset hound. Mm-hmm. And almost all of the Scolio-Pilates exercises are named after sea animals, right?
Because of my love for the ocean, yeah. But it was also because of Joseph Pilates. You know, it was my nod to him. Hopefully it was more than a nod. He certainly has such an influence on the work, making the work holistic and about, you know, being part of nature and being outside was a big part of his work. And so was it for Katerina Schroth as well, which our work draws a lot from. But so, yeah, so I told my clients at the time, I said, we have to name these exercises, so pick an animal. And so a lot of them, my clients helped me name the exercises.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, Karena. I'm looking forward to seeing you November 5th. And in the meantime, everyone take care, breathe well, and elongate.
Elongate. Yes. Thank you, Christine. I really appreciate it.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.